Hey, and welcome back to the Pulpit to Pew YouTube page. I've been off of it for about a year or so. Been thinking about getting back into it, and it all changed. My wife was taking her car to get worked on, and the guy there said, "Hey, your husband used to do those lunchtime nuggets," and he called out the lunchtime nuggets. So he was telling the truth. Lunchtime nuggets, he called it out. And he said, "But he hasn't been doing those lately." So I'm back for now. I don't know how often I'll do that. I'm testing some things out. But I'm glad that you are here, that you are watching. I am not live today, so if you're commenting below and wondering why I'm not commenting back, I don't know when I'm posting this. I'm not live right now. But I do want to talk to you a little bit about David. I preached last Sunday at my church on David when he was in the cave and he was alone, he was afraid, and he was ashamed. But he came out of that cave full of faith, with friends and family, and revival in his life. And so when I was preaching that, I preached about what was David thinking about when he was alone in that cave. And I told a little funny story about, you'll have to listen to it, but I got to thinking on that. And I've just been studying David, continuing that study. Matter of fact, I just finished recording a podcast. And on the podcast, I'm talking about 1 Samuel 23 to post tomorrow, Thursday, as of this recording. And it talks about David inquiring of the Lord. And I think it's got a principle that I think we need, Bible principle. I had two things that made me yell at my Bible. And then it's got a surprise but God statement that I had overlooked when I did our series. So all of that is coming tomorrow on the podcast. But for right now, I'm going to share with you this thought. After David got out of that cave, and after David made his way to Moab, he dropped off his family there, he got them protected. And you remember Moab was where his great-grandma was, Ruth. So he had some family there. The king of Moab was very kind to him and allowed him to put his family there. And then he makes his way down, and the story kind of transitions out of David for a few verses, and it goes to Saul. And when we look at Saul, we see Saul as a very insecure leader. We're going to see David in chapter 23 as a very secure leader, very wise leader. But Saul here is a very insecure leader. And it says that he begins to rebuke his servants. And listen to him and just tell me if this doesn't sound like a junior high boy. But he starts to say to him, like in verse 7, "Then Saul said unto his servants that stood about him, Hear now, ye Benjamites, will the son of Jesse," that's David, "will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards, and make you all captain of thousands and captain of hundreds?" They're saying, is David going to do for you what I'm doing for you? Can he really take care of you? It's almost like he's his junior high fight on you need to like me more than you like him. And he says, and then he goes on and he believes this. He says that all of you have conspired against me, that there was none that showeth me that my son hath made a league with the son of Jesse, and there is none of you that is sorry for me, or showeth unto me that my son has stirred up my servant against me to lie in wait as it is this day. And he's just whining. He says, none of you will stand up for me. None of you will tell me that Jonathan, my son, is best friends with David. Well, you already knew that. And so he's just whining as a leader right here. Just whining. Just complaining. And we can get in that state sometimes, can we not? And he's very insecure right now. And instead of just getting right, we're going to see, well, you got to listen to the podcast to get fired up about this. Instead of just acknowledging that he's not right with God and that he's in sin and getting right, he actually thinks that he's doing God's work. And I get fired up about that, and I show you in the podcast. But he goes on and he goes and he finds the priest Ahimelech. And the priest Ahimelech is the one that David showed up to in chapter 21, and David was all alone, and he shows up and he asks for the weapon, and Ahimelech gives him the sword of Goliath. Now, he had no idea. Matter of fact, Ahimelech even questioned him a couple times, saying, "Why are you alone? Are you in the king's business? What's going on here?" And David didn't tell him the truth, took the sword and left, and Ahimelech didn't know what was going on. He was totally innocent in the whole thing. But Saul comes and finds him. Saul doesn't buy his story. He says, why have you conspired against me, thou and the son of Jesse, and that thou hast given him bread and a sword, and hast inquired of God for him, that he should rise against me? He's saying you're helping him rise against me, and Ahimelech's shocked by this. He said, I had no idea what's going on. He goes on to say, he said, who is so faithful among all thy servants as David? He's been faithful to you. I mean, he's married your daughter. He's best friends with your son. I mean, he hasn't done anything. Why would I have to assume that he was going to use this sword against you or rise up against you? And Saul said, surely thou shalt die, Ahimelech, thou and all thy father's house. So then Saul orders the people around. He says, kill him. And the soldiers won't do it. They realize this is wrong. And they refuse to do it. But there's one guy, the guy that turned David into Saul, Saul, S-A-W, Saul David come out of Ahimelech's place. And this man was watching. What was his name? It was Doeg. And Doeg's the only one. No one else would touch this priest. They're like, Saul, you're wrong here. They wouldn't do it. Doeg said, I'll do it. And he just sliced up the priest. This man was wicked. David actually wrote a psalm about him. David was furious with him. I think God dealt with this guy in a serious way. But Saul is so insecure that he's now killing an innocent man because he's so angry at David. David's done nothing wrong. David's been faithful to him. Even the priest saw that. The priest has been faithful. But Saul is on a mission of revenge. You know, when you and I get on missions of revenge, we do foolish things. We do not listen to God. Now, I told you on the podcast, Saul thinks that he is following God. He's not. But he really believes that God is leading him. But when you are on a mission of revenge, you're not being led of God. You're not. Mark it down. And Saul is making foolish decision after foolish decision that even his own men won't follow. Only another wicked man who's trying to get up the ranks would do this. And so, today's nugget, we'll call it a lunchtime nugget, is this. Don't let anger and bitterness and revenge drive you to foolishness. Now, I don't think you're going to go around slicing up priests. But I do think we slice people up with our words because our hearts are so full of anger and wrath and bitterness. And that is what Saul did. But not what David did. So check out the podcast tomorrow, the Pulpit to Pew podcast on Apple, on Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. And we're going to hear the good principle that David followed, that I think all of us as leaders need to follow. And so check that out. Hit subscribe here on YouTube or wherever you're watching. Go leave a review on the podcast. And I can't wait to see you back. Probably in 2 weeks I'll do another one of these videos throughout the summer. Let's connect on video. Let's connect on podcast. Let's connect on Facebook. Let's study the Bible together. Learn it and enjoy it. Have a great week.